Westward expansion. Westward expansion started in 1783 when America signed the peace treaty with Great Britain. Its borders were the Mississippi River to the west, Canada to the north, and Florida to the south. In 1803, the Louisiana Purchase was confirmed. France offered to sell its land from the west of Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains, and the Louisiana Purchase doubled the size of the United States and gave it control of the key port of New Orleans, where the Mississippi River empties into the Gulf of Mexico. In 1819, the purchase of Florida was performed. Spain was losing its hold on its colonial empire in South America, and its colonies had already risen in a revolt. In this weakened state, Spain sought to sell Florida. Americans negotiated the purchase of Florida from Spain in 1819 for $5 million. Manifest Destiny. Many Americans came to believe that it was America's manifest destiny or fate to extend the borders of the nation to the shores of the Pacific. This belief was in keeping that Americans were the chosen people with a divine mission to spread democracy.
The political, economic, and social roots of Manifest Destiny are expanding the democracy, pioneering spirits, security, romanticizing the West, and future prosperity. The relationship between the concept of Manifest Destiny and westward growth of the nation is that since Manifest Destiny gave America fate to extend west, the westwards expansions were a big impact on the U.S. Some examples of westwards territories and expansions during the Manifest Destiny were the Oregon Territory, annexation of Texas, and the Gadsden Purchase.
The U.S.-Mexican War started in 1846. This war broke out because Mexico and the United States fought over the southern borders of Texas. America was trying to extend the U.S. border, so Polk declared war. America sent troops to Mexico, and they overthrew and defeated Mexico. After Mexico was defeated, they gave up a large Mexican territory called the Mexico Cession in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Many of the battles were fought along the Nueces River and the Rio Grande River. The Mexican Cession consisted of the territories of California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and parts of Colorado and New Mexico. All of this was given to America for a price of $15 million.
Question 4. The economic effects from the free blacks and slaves was that in the 1800s there was 100,000 free blacks in the United States, and in 1810 there was 500,000 freed African Americans. Political effects include discrimination against freed blacks due to them living in racial prejudice atmospheres. Social factors include that the people in the North moved to port towns, worked in dock towns, opened neighborhood shops, and opened churches that later on became centers for education and community life. In the South, for the people that stayed, they had few legal rights, and the majority of them became skilled craftsmen.
John C. Calhoun. John C. Calhoun was the vice president from 1782 to 1850. He was against the tariff of 1828 and secretly published the Exposition and Protest, an essay pronouncing the tariff unconstitutional. Henry Clay. Henry Clay proposed a compromise through a reduction in tariffs over the next 10 years. Faced with the issue of federal troops, South Carolina withdrew its nullification law and averted a national crisis. Jackson showed that despite his support for states' rights, he would use force to preserve the Union. The provisions and effects of congressional conflicts and compromises prior to the Civil War. The Tariff of Abominations. In the spring of 1828, Jackson's supporters demanded changes in tariff rates proposed by President John Quincy Adams. To embarrass Adams, some of the members of Congress increased duties on raw materials while lowering the tariff on manufactured textiles, displeasing both the South and the Northwest. They thought the bill would be rejected, but it was actually passed. The Tariff of 1828 became known as the Tariff Abominations.
Question 10. Henry David was jailed one night after he didn't pay his taxes. He did this to protest against the government that enforced slavery. He did this so others may follow. Nat Turner's rebellion caused a wave of fear among slave owners. This upset the Southerners, and it resulted in Southern lawmakers passing stricter regulations tightly controlling the activities of both enslaved and free blacks. Frederick Douglass was a former slave. He published anti-slavery writings and delivered speeches throughout the North. He, along with other free slaves, ran the Underground Railroad. He affected the slaves' morale and led to more free slaves across the North and South.
Political parties and interest groups on historical and contemporary issues were the Dred Scott versus Stanford court case. A Southern slave named Dred Scott was taken by his owner to the North and then taken back to slavery in the South. Dred Scott argued that he could not be taken back into slavery. The Chief of Justice, Roger Taney, read this court case and declared Dred Scott a non-citizen. Congress had no right to take a slave owner's property, but the Missouri Compromise allowed states in the South to be slave states and opposite for the North.
Question 11. The immigrants that settled in the United States were the Irish and German. The Irish settled over into the United States due to a potato famine that started in September of 1845 and ended in 1852. The Irish population dropped 20 to 25%. Millions of people died from starvation and immigration. The famine caused a lack of their number one crop, which was potatoes. The Irish traveled by ships, and when they arrived to America, they moved in cities like New York, Philadelphia, and Boston. The Irish faced ethnic prejudice and discrimination because of their Catholic religion. The Germans came to the United States for political and economic reasons. They settled in cities in the Northeast and Midwestern, like New York, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Their religion was Protestantism or Anabaptist. When they settled, they faced many problems due to them only knowing one language, which was German, so they weren't able to communicate with others who lived around them.
Historical development of the abolitionist movement was that many of them wanted to end slavery, and they sought to make this issue a focus of national politics.